Hello, good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. So good to see y'all here. Happy you're here to join us for this session. Ryan and I are super excited to get into this. We've been working on this for a long time, working on this session. Ryan's been working on the Toolset for a long time. So we're excited to take a look at the music devices that are coming to UEFN and Creative. But first up, we'll talk really quick about who we are and why we're the people giving you this presentation. So I'll start with myself. My name is Zoe Schneider. I'm a marketing manager at Epic Games. Work on the publishing side, specifically in Fortnite, the Creative Toolset, and UEFN. I came from the Harmonix acquisition in 2021, and outside of that, I'm a lifelong musician, performer, creator, heavy background in music, specifically live music and experientials. And yeah, super happy to be here and super happy to show you what we've got for you today.
And hey, I'm Ryan Challenor. I also came over in the Harmonix acquisition when Epic acquired us back in November 2021. I've been with Harmonix for 15 years as of tomorrow as an engineer and designer, and a lot of focusing on like prototyping and rapidly building stuff. And I've been focused on music, audio, gameplay feel, interface, rapid development, all that sort of category of stuff.
Great. Well, let's get right into it. This is super exciting. We're finally going to get to announce, well, it's been announced earlier. You may have caught it in the keynote, and then, of course, in the UE audio talk, it was referenced in the UEFN roadmap. But, Ryan, I'll go ahead and pass it to you in a little bit to talk about what Patchwork is. That's what we're here to talk about today. So we'll chat about that, and then we're going to go into how you're creating with it, the various uses for Patchwork, and then a little bit about the design considerations, how we got to where we are at this point. And so we've got a super packed session for you today, and we'll jump right in. But Ryan, I want to pass it to you because it's been a long time coming. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about exactly what this is?
Yeah, so Patchwork is a suite of music-making devices that combine ideas from modular synthesis and music production software and guitar pedals and bring all those things into the 3D world of Fortnite. And it's going to come in early November, really soon.
Yeah, we will talk about it. We'll talk about these devices in detail. But instead of talking too much, we are actually going to show you so you can get a better idea of exactly what it is Patchwork is capable of.
Cool. Yeah, so you just saw a whole bunch of stuff in that video. So let's break it down a bit. So there's a whole bunch of devices coming. At launch, we have 14 Patchwork devices coming to FN Creative and UEFN. And it's a modular system where each device serves a bunch of different roles. So if you're familiar with music production software, a lot of the functions might be obvious from the jump looking at these names. You have things like sequencers and synths and effects. And it's been designed as a fully modular system. So no one device does very much by itself, and instead the functionality comes from how you connect the devices together.
It's kind of crazy what we just saw. I know that there's a lot of creators in the audience, so you can imagine that's just like tip of the iceberg, the video, the highlight reel of what might be possible with it. So there's a huge opportunity to customize your soundscape within gameplay and your islands.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's talk about creating with Patchwork, because like you said, it's modular. So not one device does anything like on its own, really. They have to be connected. Can you tell us a little bit more about making those connections and actually how you make gameplay out of it?
Yeah, so we got a basic walkthrough video here for getting started with Patchwork and how you make music with it. First, I want to give a shout out to Brad Foch, who is our senior music experience designer on the team. And he's been really key in building all this stuff and working together with him. And he put all these videos together for us, including that awesome highlight reel. So he couldn't be here with us at Unreal Fest, so instead we get virtual Brad through his video VO presence. So first up, here's a video Brad made showing the basic flow of how to connect Patchwork devices to make them all work together.
Let's start by making some drums. So first, we'll grab a drum sequencer. This is where we design our drum patterns. That looks like a nice pattern, but we can't hear it. That's because it's not plugged into anything. So why don't we grab our drum player, put that down, and plug it in. And now we can see that these nice shapes are bouncing to the beat, but we still can't hear it. So why don't we grab a speaker, place that down, plug it in, and now we can hear it. Very nice. So if we go back to our drum sequencer, we can kind of cruise through these different patterns. We can even design our own patterns. Very cool. We can browse through different drum kits. We can even really dial in different sounds that we want. Let's say we have an idea. This would sound better if it had some distortion on it. So since Patchwork is a modular system, you can reconfigure it on the fly. So let's plug in our distortion right into the mix there, and voila, we've got distorted drums.
Yeah, so you can see some of the basic Patchwork interactions. You're connecting devices together with patch cables, you're manipulating knobs within a 3D world, and these types of in-world UI interactions are all new for Fortnite and help to give a physical feeling to these virtual interfaces. And now that we're past the basics there, here's more from Brad and to look at how you can go further with the tools using Patchwork to build systems up and compose music.
All right, so we are back in our music room here. The drums are still cooking, and I've added a bunch of other devices for us to keep making our full song. So let's move over to the bass next. We've got this cool upright bass sound. All right, that sounded pretty good. We've also got this progressor device, which moves our notes through a chord progression automatically. So that's pretty handy. Sounded pretty good. Let's move on to some chords next. And I'm going to make our chords out of this vibraphone sound that we set on our instrument player. Very nice. And I'm going to do a similar thing. Just turn on the progressor, and just like magic, our bass and vibraphone are following the same chords. So you don't even need to know much about how all this works. It just sounds good together. Cool. So finally, I will add a melody, and I'm not going to do anything too fancy here. Maybe something that kind of follows the basic rhythm of the song. Add a little spice at the end here, and there you have it. So far, we've been looking at building this song in Creative, but you can actually do many of the same things in UEFN. So let's take a look at that. So here we are in UEFN. It's the same room we've been in, the same devices. And here's the synth for the lead synthesizer we've been doing. So here's the volume at 1.5. Let's just click in there, type 0, and you hear the synth is now gone. You can see the volume knob is also back down to 0. Go back to UEFN, turn it back up, we can hear it again. We can do the same thing with the byte knob. Yeah, so it's a very nice workflow. You can work in Creative, UEFN, and have access to the benefits of both worlds.
Yeah, so as you can see, you can have the whole system up and running while you're editing it, rather than more of a workflow of setting up a bunch of stuff and configuring a bunch of settings and putting all the notes in, but then not seeing the results until you hit play. So this really cuts down in your iteration loop and makes the creation process a lot more playful and allows you to sort of feel your way through it and stumble upon happy accidents and compose through jamming. And as you can see, you can use it through both the Fortnite Creative interface or through the more powerful interface of UEFN or through a hybrid approach of using both.
Yeah, just really quick, I think y'all are seeing this for the first time. It's pretty incredible. And like you said, like the physical casings of it, actually being able to either go into the editor and work with it or put your hands on it, connect some cables. Like there's just so much you can do right there.
Yeah, and the cases are just like cool looking. They're like, oh, they look like things I want to own. And oh, well, now you have an infinite number of, well, not infinite. You have the memory thermometer, but you have a bunch of them inside of these islands. And so with these new music tools, you saw composing there, but one immediate application of it is that you now have a new way of adding soundtracks to your creations. So a cool thing that Patchwork enables is more opportunity for reactive soundtracks. So in-game events can adjust parameters on the Patchwork devices. So typically for a game, like if you're making a reactive soundtrack in a game, you might like make some tracks in a DAW, and then you set up your audio project in your game audio software, and then you expose some sort of property system that can affect the parameters, and then you have to mirror those properties on the game side and pass them along. But with this in-world setup of Patchwork, it integrates it all into the same environment. So you're not jumping into different contexts, and you're building all of your music in the same place that you're building your gameplay. So more from Brad on that.
I was going to say, let's just pass it over to Brad so you can see exactly what that looks like.
Let's take a look at how Patchwork can help us make interactive soundtracks for our game. And this can be nicer sometimes when you don't just want the music to loop over and over. Here's just a quick reminder of what that gameplay looks like that we'll be designing the music for. So I've made a little kind of testing switch station here, and that allows us to test our transitions without playing the level over and over. Instead, just flip the switch and we can see how it sounds. So first we'll start creeping along the forest. It's all stealth. And then we get onto the wolf. Drums kick in, gets a little more energetic, and then we approach the boss. It's very exciting. And then we win. And yeah, that's kind of just a quick preview of how a music system could work. And just each device is kind of set up. That's when we hop onto the wolf, and then when a more upbeat drum pattern plays when we're fighting the boss. And you can even make little sound effects. And that's just a way to add some emphasis to one of your transitions, or maybe even hide the blending between two layers of music. So yeah, that's the basic idea of how to build an interactive soundtrack using Patchwork.
Yeah, and so that's all using the creative event system for controlling that stuff together. So you see he used the toggle switches there, but you could also have it be like when you jump on the wolf, then it sends the creative event that makes that start playing. And you can like enable, disable the Patchwork devices with that, or set specific properties on specific knobs based on the in-world events. So like if you're working on it in this environment and you're thinking like, oh, I wish the drums were a little louder for this part, or I wish that synth was a little brighter, then you can adjust it just right there in the world, rather than you or your audio person having to go back out to their music production software and make the adjustments and bounce some new loops and then re-import them. And you can just like make all those changes right there, which like, encourages you to find exactly what you want rather than like stopping when it's good enough, when you're tired of going back and forth.
No, that immediate feedback is a total game changer and incredible. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about driving gameplay, because I know there's a lot of folks here who will be working with it in that specific context.
Yeah, this is a really exciting one. So you saw in that example how you could use the event system to control Patchwork so that the game state can affect the music. But you can also go the other way, so you can send events out of Patchwork so that music can drive gameplay. So you can use notes as control data so that the same sequencers you're using to drive your music are also driving your level. And so many of the already existing devices have hooks that use this event system. So that provides a whole bunch of opportunity to combine Patchwork with the other devices in creative ways. So back to Brad to take a look at some of that.
So we've already seen how gameplay can affect music with the boss battle. Now let's take a look at how music can affect gameplay. So here we have a simple series of notes sending to our note trigger. And the note trigger then sends creative events to the various props and devices in our level. So that allows us to do things to the beat. In this case, I've made a simple obstacle course that moves to the beat. So I'm going to try to run past these, and kind of stay aware of the music as I'm moving through and thinking about it. Here I got to time my jump. So okay, listening to the beat, jump, and all right, made it through. Very nice. We've got some targets. They're all appearing to the beat. This makes everything feel a little more musical. We've got a little weird door puzzle to the beat. Here, the ocean is rising and falling to the beat. We're going to time that. Get into the water, swim into the stage, and yes, all right, made it to the dance party. We've got a few VFX and some lights shooting to the beat. So yeah, there are so many options now that we have patchwork, keeping our levels synchronized to the music.
Yeah, so this setup here just kind of scratches the surface of the possibilities in this space, and we're really excited about all the new types of gameplay and experiences that will emerge from this when people combine these systems in ways that we never expected.
Right, which we were talking about this a little bit earlier this week. That's like the most rewarding thing making something like this, where you've been working on this for a long time. You've used this in so many different instances. Brad is brilliant and finds so many different applications for this, but it's the folks in the audience, the creators in our ecosystem who are going to do things that we just don't anticipate, didn't see coming, or do what we've been doing even better than we've done it, which is just like a thrilling prospect with a tool like this that has so much potential.
And then finally, one really fun discovery that we made along the way to building this stuff is that we set out to make these devices for making music within Fortnite, but with the simultaneous collaborative building environment in Fortnite Creative and UEFN, we stumbled across a really fun way to make music together, even if you're not in the same room together. So it presented itself as an answer to what's kind of become a modern classic problem. Like because of latency, sending audio back and forth, how do you jam with someone who's on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world? And there's a lot of products that have had some fun solutions to this problem, but due to the nature of the simultaneous collaborative environment, we sort of just got it for free. And because rather than sending rendered audio back and forth, we're just sending the instructions for the composition, and the synthesis is all happening locally. So earlier this year, as our tech was getting more solid, we started to get curious about how this stuff was going to work when you had multiple people in the same session. So a few of us got together remotely on a Friday to check it out. And back then, there were plenty of bugs, various things like not replicating across the network properly. But even with that, instantly, it was so fun, and we could feel that awesome new core. So eventually, it became a weekly event. We called it our Fun Times Fridays, where we'd all just hop into a Zoom call for an hour and just jam and make really weird noises and have fun to close out the week. And it kind of instantly became the best part of the week. And it really captured the same vibe that I've had as jamming with friends in person, that sort of 2 a.m. tweaking the filter sort of thing. And it's been awesome to, hit that at 11 a.m. on a Friday. And it's been really amazing to have folks jamming together on the East Coast, West Coast, UK, Spain, all jamming together in the same session and feeling like we're making music in the same physical space.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the word that comes to mind when I look at something like this, and y'all get a chance to see, how this works on this island in a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But it's accessible. It's an accessible way to make music. So somebody who's a novice music maker could sit next to somebody like Ryan, who's been doing this for a while, and opt in whenever they want, opt out when they're feeling like, okay, I want to see where this piece goes, and then add my little finesse to it. But it's just fun. It feels good to do. I think, like Ryan said, that how do you make music together when you're not together? That's a question that is not new, but this definitely is a new answer. And to be able to do it in real time, in a fun and accessible way, through these casings that are beautiful and very intuitive is just super incredible. And there's no pressure to jump in. If you have a party of four that's in there and they're making their own thing, you can just sit back and enjoy, or you can go in and get weird. And like you said, we've made a lot of noise on the Friday Fun Time. That has been, every once in a while I'll be working on something on the side, and I was just like, wait a minute, what is that? Because you just find, like you said, the happiest accidents when you're creating like that.
Yeah, there's the moments of oh, somebody hits a really good groove, and you're like, oh, whoa, good job. Or somebody makes a really crazy sound, you're like, whoa, how the hell did you do that? And it's just really super fun.
Yeah. No, totally agree. So now that you've seen a little bit about what it is, an emphasis on a little bit, this is a deep tool set, so of course more information will be coming. We want to talk a little bit about how we actually got here and some of the things that we were working on and sort of how this project came to be. So we obviously, as we mentioned, both came from the Harmonix acquisition. And Harmonix is a pro at making music and game experiences, right? So we've got titles like Fuser that you might be familiar with, Rock Band, of course, which most people in this room are either familiar with or have played themselves, and Dance Central. And I think that it's really important to note that Patchwork in so many ways is a spiritual successor of these titles. You've seen Harmonix tech for years, these things that we're working on are not necessarily new, but to be able to do it in the environment like Fortnite Creative and UEFN as these devices is a game changer. I did a ton of work on Fuser, and it really was such an awesome opportunity to, that tech is still one of my favorite things I've ever seen. If you're not familiar with what Fuser is, it was essentially a DJ music mixing game where you can take stems from top 40 hits and mix them together in real time, put effects on them, filters on them, sort of make it your own. And we're talking like the weirdest combinations you've ever heard of songs you would not expect to go together, but because of the tech, it immediately sounded good. It was in the same key, you could modulate them together, it went to the same tempo no matter what the original key or tempo was for those songs. So really awesome work that was being done there. And you'll see some of the influences of not only the tech, but the experience that Harmonix has learned in the last 25 plus years about how to make fun music experiences. How do you surprise and delight people through music gameplay? And I think Patchwork is definitely capable of doing that in the same way that these super familiar and fun titles have done before.
Yeah, and we've had a bunch of tools and knowledge to help us make these types of music games, and Patchwork like helps get that type of tools and knowledge out to people so that they can use it to make their own experiences.
Yeah, and I mean, to that same point, I do just want to shout out the team really quick who has worked so hard on this. And, it's not just the Patchwork team. Like I said, this being a spiritual successor and all these spiritual predecessors, this is hundreds of people over many years who've contributed little pieces that got Patchwork to be possible and make it what it is today. So even the Patchwork Fun Time that we've been doing is just such a cool way to get people in, and there's people who maybe weren't even on the project who stepped in to jam with us, and it was like they would make a suggestion or see something or give us just new insight that was so profound. So the knowledge base of Harmonix was definitely a big contributor to developing Patchwork into what it is. But we also, of course, want to talk about the Epic acquisition a little bit, because that really set us up for success in being able to do something that we might not have been able to do on our own.
Yeah. So during the Epic acquisition, the design team at Epic posed the question at one point. It's like, what's your vision for music in the metaverse to Harmonix? And we talked a lot about ways that you could experience recorded music in an environment like that, listen to it and play along with it. But given my interests, my mind immediately went to the music creation space. And we proposed the idea of music creation tools that exist in a 3D space that you could touch, that you could observe the elements of music flowing through them. Kind of a Rube Goldberg machine that allows you to build modular synthesizers the size of an apartment building. And walking around an environment like that where the music is like visibly, physically happening all around you, to me that felt like music in the metaverse. And everyone was really excited about it too, which is cool. It's like, oh, this is a great partnership. Everyone wants us to build this crazy thing. It was awesome. And Patchwork is sort of in the category of music creation tools that we've wanted to build at Harmonix, but it was hard to find a context that made sense as a product and had potential beyond just like being a closed system.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, like I said, the Epic acquisition really allowed us to do something we wouldn't have been able to do autonomously, which is reach more people with these tools and make it more widely available to people, because this is like a super robust toolkit, and to be able to do it in an environment like Fortnite and UEFN, that just expands the reach. And like I mentioned, Fuser, I love that game. I still play it, that still gets me so excited. I'll play back some of the old Fuser sessions that we used to do just to like hear some of the mixes that used to happen. But we never really hit that audience of like mass appeal and got it in front of everybody. But it was one of those things, and I know you were a part of this when we did different showings at PAX or whatnot, of like, the second somebody had their hands on it, they're like, oh, this rocks, this feels amazing, this is the DJ version of that rock band vibe where I suddenly feel like, a real star when I'm on stage without having to practice, which rocks. And Fuser definitely accomplished that, but we just weren't able to get it in front of enough people to get them excited about it. And of course, in an environment like Fortnite with a massive audience, that's super huge. And for a lot of our creators out there, I know that that's exciting for you all to have an opportunity to make your own rhythm games that can then reach other people at a mass scale.
And another awesome thing about the Epic acquisition is like the Unreal Engine has an incredible suite of audio tools, and Metasounds jumps out as the obvious tech to use to build this thing. And its power and flexibility is what made this ambition feasible. So Metasounds is an amazing sound design tool, but it's also just as equally an amazing music creation tool, and I wanted to bring that element of it to the forefront to keep pushing on it and expanding its musical capabilities. For people who aren't familiar with Metasounds yet, it's a highly performant audio system that provides audio designers complete control over a DSP graph, a digital signal processing graph, for the generation of sound sources. So if you're familiar more with the graphics side of things, you could think of Metasounds as like shader graphs, but for audio. And as I said, Metasounds was the ideal tech to allow our team to build Patchwork together. So our sound designers could create Metasound patches that each represent the functionality of a Patchwork device. And they could iterate on the specifics of the implementation, or like even design whole new synth architectures from the ground up, but without like the need to go back and forth with the DSP engineer on everything, which allowed them to have the freedom to chase some fun and wild ideas and prove them out without having to like mobilize engineering and production and schedules to build stuff. And instead they could like just chase good ideas. So jumping in a bit more to what I was talking about there, MetaSounds, which anyone can use in Unreal Editor, has an editor for designing sounds and behaviors. And in this graphic here, the left side has an example of what one of our sound designers made to power the audio for our Omega Synth device. And the right side shows the patchwork interface that users see in World. So all the knobs on there are controlling inputs on the MetaSound graph. And then the UE Audio team recently added runtime graph building through the MetaSound Builder API, which is an experimental feature in UE 5.3. And what that allows us to do is build a bunch of patches, one for each patchwork device, and then as the user connects them together, we're dynamically stitching the patches together at runtime into one single graph. And so the patchwork devices we're releasing are essentially wrappers on MetaSounds, especially like 3D MetaSounds, which is pretty sweet. It's been really awesome working with MetaSounds. Early on, when we got the MetaSound Builder tech in, I was working on it and running on Play and Editor with a patchwork system connected together, and I was tweaking some of the behavior of the Omega Synth and trying to get the right sound. And I thought, oh man, it would be so cool if I could somehow like push these edits to the running session. But obviously, I thought like a sweet workflow like that would be like a big request of the UE Audio team. But then I made my edit, and then I triggered a rebuild of the graph, and then it like just worked, which was, I was really blown away by the workflow of MetaSounds and how awesome it was, because I could just, with my Play and Editor session running, I could change how the behavior worked, and then it would just update on the fly, which was really sweet. And then a bunch of the tech driving patchwork behavior is adapted from music tech that we've had at Harmonix for a long time, and it's all built as a plugin on top of MetaSounds. And the possibilities for other third-party devs to extend MetaSounds in the same way is huge. So just like big shout out to MetaSounds for being this awesome piece of tech.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, obviously a lot of information and expertise coming from Harmonix, but to be able to have that in combination with the power of MetaSounds, and like you said, Patchwork is a 3D casing for this super powerful tool. And again, it comes back to the word I mentioned earlier, which is accessible, which is really an exciting prospect for that. But Ryan, I'm gonna pass it back to you to talk a little bit about the performance side of things.
Yeah, and like the UE Audio team and Harmonix are continuing to improve the performance and look for features to help creators. Like as you can see here, like you can have a whole bunch of stuff running all at once, and it's been awesome to see like just how much you can get going. And in building these giant patchwork setups, the team has really been stressing the system to like find where the boundaries currently are and to push them further. So like building with patchwork invites like users to want to add more and more and more, which provides a great use case to drive the UE Audio team to optimize these things and make them run more efficiently. And also that ends up going out and like benefiting all MetaSounds users by making MetaSound more performant.
Okay, so we're going to quickly cover some of the design considerations, because as you can see, it's just like a deep and robust tool that's available to you. So obviously there was a lot of work that went into actually bringing that to fruition. Ryan, can you talk to us a little bit about how do you make a tool like this intuitive? We just saw a DSP, which is sort of massive and can be a little intimidating. How do you make it so that maybe a new music user, or excuse me, music maker, a novice to the space can get in and immediately get their hands on something and create?
Yeah, so music production a lot of times on computers is like pretty opaque and abstract, and it's like hidden in different screens and different layers of a DAW, like music production software. And doing it in 3D allows us to take things that are typically hidden and abstract, all that information, and then make it visible and physical, which I think makes it easier to learn and allows you to remain in a more playful space while you're creating. So rather than needing to like keep a mental map in your head of the different layers of music software, which I personally have a lot of trouble with, you can instead like leverage your spatial memory with all the elements of your music production, like having a physical presence. Like, oh, my drums are over here, my synth is over here. So to cut down on the abstract, the devices are very visual, because you can see them performing their actions. You can watch notes and audio travel through the cables through the system. If you're thinking like, why aren't my drums playing? You can follow the cables up the chain and see, oh, it's because my drum sequencer is turned off. And you can just sort of follow that visually rather than having to know it.
Right, I mean, the iteration loop for that is so quick, and I know, having worked with a few of you in the audience on some of the things that you develop, those things can take time, and anything that can cut down on that time is so valuable to our creators, to the developers who are going to be working with this. And so just having that immediate feedback and that, like I said, quick iteration loop is sort of game-changing. And when we're talking about intuitive creation, right? So kind of like Fuser Tech that I mentioned, you drop a few things together and it immediately sounds good. There's the possibility for this too. The note sequencer actually, as a default, is by scale. So if you go in, it's immediately going to sound good. You're not going to have dissonant notes that are coming together immediately, unless you want that, because those who are a little more adventurous can actually set it to be chromatic, so they can do whatever notes they want. So you have a lot of control over exactly what sounds are coming out of this. So if you want it to just, be within a specific scale, major or minor, whatever your preference is, you go ahead, you pop it in, put in your notes, it's going to sound good. But if you want to have very specific, minute control over what sound is coming out down to the pitch, you can, of course, do that as well. So you can really switch between the scales or chromatic to hit every single note that you want, which really opens it up. And the fact that it looks like so playful and I want to touch that. It's that it reminds me of before. And I have a background in audio engineering. When you just see somebody do it before you know what all the buttons do, you're like, I want to turn that knob. I want to press that. I have that same giddy feeling when I look at this, where it's like, okay, I just want to press some buttons and see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and all the devices are built so they by default share the same scale and all run off the same clock, off the same tempo, so that everything is sort of working together. So it'll all help you to jam, and it allows you to compose music just by kind of messing around and experimenting. So you can just kind of dive in without a plan and build something rather than having a full composition in your head and having to somehow translate it out. One example of the power of making abstract concepts physical is our LFO device. For the people on our team who were less familiar with electronic music production, when I first talked about the LFO, it was kind of a tougher sell to get them on board with, because it was harder to immediately grasp. Because originally it was sort of just you would take this cable and then plug it into a knob, and it was just confusing. People didn't understand if it's energy flowing into it or whatever. And then when I explained that, LFO simply stands for low frequency oscillator, then that just made things worse. But then when we were talking through it, we realized that an LFO could also be thought of as an automatic knob turner. So then we just changed the visuals for it from a cable into a robotic arm with a gripper claw that grabs onto knobs, which you can see in the GIF here. And suddenly the LFO is everyone's favorite device. It's oh, I get what that does. The robot's turning the knobs for me.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I keep coming back to it, but it's so important. Accessibility, between, having to explain that and actually just seeing it and it actually looking super cool, I think that y'all made the right decision with making it look like this, because it really is inviting and exciting and really does speak to the importance of the design. This is a deep tool set, and making it look a way that people feel like they can approach and not be intimidated by or resistant to, I think makes a big difference for adoption. But let's talk about, like I said, it's powerful. How do you balance that with something like this? There's so much you could do. You want all these different options. How do you give people unlimited options without totally overwhelming them?
Yeah, part of that is just modularity. You break things down into components, and so things can be smaller, but then if you want to add more, then you can get more. When we were talking through the features we want these devices to achieve, there was a lot of calibration on our end of trying to figure out how many knobs we should put on these devices to strike a balance where a new person wasn't totally overwhelmed, but we also wanted to provide the level of functionality to allow experienced people to make great things with it. So our target was just kind of hit that magical Lego-like sweet spot of accessible but deep. And I think we've done a good job in getting to there.
No, actually what you're seeing right here is a great example of it, the drum player, right? So if you're looking at the top image, you can just work with that and get drum sounds and have it exactly what you want. But if you're really a control freak like me, you can actually just go in and change exactly what you want, from the tune to the everything about the actual sound of the drums, get some effects on it so it sounds exactly how you want it to. And I think it's a really elegant solve to that, where you have as little options as you want, so you don't ever have to look at this and still get an output, or you can have as much nuanced decision-making power as you want as well.
Yeah, it's really fun to get really tweaky with the knob and get the tune just where you want it, change the envelope on it, and just take a couple of samples and get a bunch of new sounds out of them.
And to that same point, it's you can still explore within this, right? Like he said, you don't need to have a plan to go in and make something. You can just go in and move some things around until you find something that you really like and you're excited about.
Yeah. And then on the deep end of the spectrum, I'm really looking forward to the patchwork creations that surprise us, where people sort of invent new ways of using it. So one of the awesome parts about modular systems is that when you break functionality from big monoliths into component pieces, then people can combine them in the expected ways that you want them to, but it also allows people to combine them in unexpected ways and build new functionality. We've had these devices for a long time, I've been playing with them for a long time, and I'm still finding out fun new ways to use them. For example, we've got our note sequencer, and we have our LFO that, as of a few weeks ago, has a nice random modulation setting, which turns knobs to random positions at rhythmic times. And then I realized that if I take our note sequencer and I fill each of the pages with just each successive pitch up in a scale, and then I put the random LFO onto the page knob, then now suddenly I have a random note generator, which is pretty sweet. And it's not like a separate device. It's a combination of two devices to get that functionality. Another one from the other week was combining our echo effect with two of our step modulators in a certain way that allowed me to construct a fun beat repeat effect. So this modular approach creates a lot of opportunities for fun behaviors to emerge. And as we release more patchwork devices, the possibility space will continue to explode, especially when you throw the rest of the UEFN and creative devices into the mix. My favorite part of building a tool is, when people use them to build things that you weren't anticipating. When you say, wow, how did you build that from what we gave you? And that's just the best part of building tools.
Right, I mean, like you said at the top of this, there's 14 devices coming with this at launch. So you have the 14 devices, and then of course the other devices within the tool set that it connects to. So it really is so many possibilities that we're gonna be seeing once it's in the hands of our creators and developers. So I wanna talk a little bit about 14 devices, that's a lot. And it's a super deep tool set. So there's a few things that we're gonna be providing to actually get people up to speed and get them on track to using it effectively and feeling comfortable doing so. Actually, what you see in the image right here is a patchwork music gallery, which is essentially a museum that shows you how to work with patchwork with the description of devices, gives you time to actually get your hands on all of them, get familiar with them as individual devices, and then of course start to think about how you're going to connect them. And then we also have, which was featured in a still image in the presentation earlier, Club Patchwork, which is an opportunity to jam with the devices. It's an island that just allows you to create, a different soundtrack and get into actually just jamming with your friends in sort of this open world and get as weird or as simple as you want with some of the things that you're making. In addition to those two islands, we're also going to have a template island. So we'll have a template island that's connected to gameplay, so you can actually go in and see how Patchwork is going to interact with these various devices, how it responds to gameplay. In addition to all that, we're also having some prefab galleries. So if you want to get really specific about what devices you're using for Patchwork and how you want to connect them autonomously, you'll have that chance. We'll also have some prefabs so you can actually go in, see something that's already a little bit set up, and start to get familiar in that way. But we're really using this approach to make it easy for anybody. I mean, whether you're an expert music maker with 15 years of experience in development like Ryan over here, and even more than that outside of harmonics, but whether you're casual or you're an expert like that, you can go in, understand the tools at a surface level, and then really yourself go in and dig a little deeper into it. So we also are providing a ton of educational resources. Our incredible documentation team is pulling together docs for an overview of Patchwork, an overview of these galleries and islands, the template, in addition to individual guides for each of the devices. So if you have a question, there's going to be a ton of resources made available to you to understand this when we launch a little bit later this year. But there's everything. There's a couple exemplar islands. You can just play around and experience how fun it is. The template, which you can, of course, play or go into to get a feel for how these devices connect to gameplay. And then, of course, all the various educational resources like documentation. And after we launch, you can expect to see us all over the place. We'll have some live streams. We'll get some of these devs in the forum so you can ask them questions directly as you actually get your hands on the tool set. So we really want to set our community up for success with this. So when this drops, we're not going to leave you high and dry. There's going to be a lot of resources coming your way to better understand these tools.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the visual and hands-on nature of these devices helps a lot of people get to learn about and play with music in ways that they might not otherwise have been exposed to. It's really awesome to be able to give out a modular synth to millions of users for free. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and I think that something, formerly harmonics, that was always really rewarding was the moments was like, oh, I learned how to play guitar because I started playing Rock Band. I learned how to play drums from playing Rock Band. And I think there's a lot of potential for Patchwork to spark and catalyze that same love of music for a whole new generation of gamers, players, creators. It's just so exciting thing about the possibility once people actually have this in their hands.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a lot, but there's more. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what might be coming?
Yeah, so you'll be able to get your hands on with this stuff in UEFN and Fortnite Creative in early November. We've got these 14 devices coming, and they're going to give you a lot of power. But we don't expect that they'll immediately solve all musical applications. But remember that Patchwork is a modular system, so hopefully you can see that we can continue to extend this functionality through the addition of new devices. So we'll continually be updating Patchwork with new drops of devices. We got a few devices coming that didn't make it into our initial launch that we'll be following up with. And then we've got other new devices along the lines of these ones to help you add functionality that you can probably guess at. And then we've got some other types of modules that we've been prototyping that probably nobody will guess at, so hopefully we can surprise you. Also, once we launch, we're going to see how people are using Patchwork, which is going to influence the types of devices that we work on to help best support the way that the community is using these tools. And then just due to the combinatoric power of modular systems, like every time we add a new device into the mix, it's going to make the whole system more powerful, all the other devices more powerful, and the possibility space will just keep exploding. So stay tuned for those, and we look forward to seeing how you connect everything all together. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great fest.